September 1939. Poland stands at the edge of a war that has already been decided elsewhere. Along its borders, soldiers take their positions, unaware that the battle they are about to fight has been lost before it begins. This is Poland, at the opening hours of the Second World War. In 1939, Europe was tense but silent. Diplomacy still spoke the language of agreements, while armies prepared in secret. Poland stood between two powers that had already determined its fate. To the west, Germany mobilized with speed and coordination unseen in modern warfare. To the east, the Soviet Union waited, watching events unfold with calculated patience. Officially, Poland was not alone. It had guarantees. It had allies. On paper, it had time. Poland's military doctrine reflected a belief in delay rather than prevention. The strategy assumed that a determined defense could hold long enough for Western allies to intervene. Mobilization plans existed, but they were slow. Political pressure discouraged full readiness, fearing it might provoke the very war Poland hoped to avoid. Units were spread thin along long borders, tasked with defending territory rather than concentrating force. The Polish army itself was experienced but constrained. Veterans of earlier conflicts filled its ranks. Cavalry units, often misunderstood later, still played practical roles in reconnaissance and mobility. Yet equipment shortages were real. Tanks were few. Aircraft were outdated. Communication relied heavily on field runners and vulnerable telephone lines. The army prepared to fight a war it understood. The enemy prepared to fight a war that had not yet been imagined. German planning had already moved beyond traditional concepts. Speed was central. Coordination between armor, air power, and infantry was rehearsed repeatedly. Poland was not viewed as a long campaign, but as an opening act. German forces were positioned to strike deep, bypass resistance, and isolate units before they could fully engage. On the morning of September 1, 1939, Poland woke to sound rather than warning. Bombs fell on airfields before planes could take off. Rail junctions were hit before mobilization orders reached their destinations. Command posts were struck before reports could be compiled. What looked like scattered attacks were, in fact, part of a single coordinated motion. Polish units fought where they stood. In forests. In villages. Along roads never meant to carry tanks. Officers tried to impose order on chaos that arrived faster than messages could travel. Reserves moved toward fronts that no longer existed. Defensive lines dissolved before they could fully form. This was not yet defeat. But it was already failure. Not of courage. Not of resolve. It was the failure of timing. The failure of preparation shaped by political illusion. The battle was not lost in combat. It was lost in planning rooms months earlier, where the future was underestimated and the present misunderstood. As the invasion progressed, the disparity became clearer with each passing hour. German forces did not seek decisive battles in the traditional sense. They sought collapse. Armored columns pushed forward relentlessly, ignoring flanks, trusting speed to protect them. Air power severed communication lines, turning coordinated defense into isolated resistance. Polish commanders struggled to understand the scale of what was happening. Reports arrived late or not at all. Units that were supposed to hold key positions had already been bypassed. Roads filled with civilians fleeing eastward, mixing with retreating soldiers and incoming reserves. Movement became confusion. Confusion became paralysis. Attempts to regroup met constant interference from the air. Columns were spotted and attacked. Bridges were destroyed moments before they could be crossed. Supply convoys vanished under strafing fire. Ammunition ran low. Fuel became scarce. Orders contradicted one another as the situation changed faster than command structures could adapt. Despite this, resistance continued. Local counterattacks were launched. Villages changed hands multiple times. Soldiers fought with what they had, often unaware of events beyond their immediate surroundings. In many cases, they believed they were holding the line, not knowing the line had already moved behind them. The Polish Air Force suffered heavily in the first days. Aircraft were destroyed on the ground or outmatched in the air. Those that remained flew from improvised fields, operating with limited fuel and support. Pilots fought isolated battles in a sky dominated by the enemy. Their efforts slowed advances but could not alter direction. Meanwhile, political reality failed to catch up with military collapse. Allied declarations came, but action did not. Polish command still hoped for relief, still believed time could be bought with sacrifice. Every delay was paid for in lives. Every stand was temporary. German advances created pockets rather than fronts. Entire divisions found themselves encircled without ever seeing the main enemy force. Surrenders occurred not from lack of will, but from exhaustion and isolation. Some units fought until ammunition ran out. Others attempted breakouts that dissolved under air attack. The battle had become fragmented. No single moment defined it. There was no decisive clash. Only a series of withdrawals, retreats, and last stands that blurred together. Each action mattered locally. None changed the outcome. What unfolded was not a contest of equal forces, but a demonstration of asymmetry. One side moved as a system. The other reacted as individuals in small groups. Courage remained constant. Structure did not. By the time Polish commanders understood the full scope of the disaster, options were gone. The enemy had already reached deep into the country. Defensive depth no longer existed. What remained was endurance, not strategy. The final stage did not arrive with a single event. It arrived gradually, quietly. The realization spread before official acknowledgement followed. The defense was no longer coherent. The state itself was dissolving under pressure. As German forces pressed from the west, a new reality emerged from the east. On September 17, Soviet troops crossed the border. There was no declaration of war that mattered. No formal resistance could be organized. The Polish command structure, already strained beyond its limits, effectively ceased to exist. For many soldiers, this moment marked the true end. Not because they stopped fighting, but because there was no longer a direction in which to fight. Units found themselves between two advancing powers. Escape routes vanished. Borders lost meaning. Battles continued in isolated pockets. Forests became refuges. Cities resisted where possible. But these were no longer parts of a larger defense. They were fragments of one. Each stand existed in isolation, cut off from the others by distance and silence. Losses mounted rapidly. Prisoners were taken in vast numbers. Equipment was abandoned or destroyed. Roads were littered with remnants of an army that had not been defeated in one blow, but taken apart piece by piece. The government fled. Orders stopped arriving. Commanders made independent decisions, often choosing surrender to prevent unnecessary deaths. Others ordered dispersal, hoping soldiers might survive as civilians. Uniforms were discarded. Weapons were buried. Identity itself became a liability. The climax was not dramatic. There was no final charge. No decisive battlefield moment to be remembered. Instead, there was exhaustion, confusion, stillness after movement. Silence after constant noise. Poland had fought. That was undeniable. But the battle it fought was not the one unfolding around it. It had prepared for a war of attrition. It faced a war of annihilation through speed and coordination. By the time adaptation was possible, there was nothing left to adapt. What remained were scattered acts of resistance that history would later isolate and commemorate. But the larger collapse faded into abstraction. It lacked a single image. It lacked a symbol. It lacked a clear ending. And so the battle ended without conclusion. Not with surrender. Not with victory. But with disappearance. The fighting did not end with a final order. It faded. Some units were still moving. Others had already stopped. There were no clear fronts anymore. No directions that mattered. Maps became useless. They described a country that no longer existed as a battlefield. Soldiers waited. They listened. They realized nothing was coming. Messages did not arrive. Commanders were gone. Headquarters were empty or silent. Weapons were set aside. Not dropped in panic. Placed carefully on the ground. Uniforms lost their meaning. Insignia were torn away. Documents were burned or buried. Men walked away in small groups. Some headed for forests. Some for villages. Some simply walked until night fell. The roads that once carried armies became empty. The fields returned to stillness. Smoke cleared. There was no ceremony. No announcement. No moment that marked the end. The battle dissolved into occupation. Into arrests. Into long lines of prisoners. Later, the war moved on. New fronts appeared. Larger battles demanded attention. This collapse was folded into something bigger. It became an introduction. A beginning, not an event. Names of places remained. But their meaning faded. The soldiers who stood there were remembered only as numbers. Or not remembered at all. There was no single defeat to point to. No decisive image to preserve. Only absence remained. The silence after movement. The emptiness after command. A battle that had been lost before it began. Vanished without leaving a clear trace. And history moved forward. As if it had never been there. If this story mattered to you, consider subscribing. More forgotten history is coming.